If I had to describe Lee Daniels' Netflix film, The Deliverance, in one sentence, I would say that I can see he enrolled in the scary movie class at the community college, but he either slept through every class or never bothered to show up because homie was not prepared for the final exam. I was hanging out with one of my best friends yesterday when I got a text from my mom asking me about this movie, if I had seen it yet, and I said no, and then she told me to watch it and review it. So, Mama, this is for you. Directed by Lee Daniels, stars Andra Day, Anjanae Ellis-Taylor, Monique, Omar Epps, Glenn Close. Nice little stacked cast. Ebony, who is a single mother and a struggling alcoholic, her 3 children, and her mother, who has cancer, just moved into this new home in Pittsburgh, and strange things keep happening within the home that seem to be negatively affecting the children. This is a horror movie in that demon possession subgenre. At least I think that's what he was going for. That was not scary. It was a bit of a letdown, kind of boring. Somebody's going to ask, so let's just address it here. Do you think it's demonic? I don't really play into that. I don't get bothered like that. It's just a movie. And even if I did, it's not good enough to warrant a conversation. Lee Daniels, he's a good storyteller. He's a good director. I don't know what the problem here was, because we started off kind of, sort of, I don't want to say strong. It felt like everyone was playing caricatures. They were just playing personalities. They weren't really people, so to speak. You know, you had angry black woman in Ebony. You had hood white grandma in Glenn Close. Bless her heart. She was so much better than this. And then, you know, boss babe Monique, who's just, you know, showing how powerful she is. And it was just very expository for no good reason. A lot of what we were learning about Ebony was from the words of other people. There was no really unfolding with her. Honestly, that was part of the problem for me, and as to why I couldn't really engage with this the way I would do any other like horror movie or, you know, ghost story, demon possession movie, is because there was just nothing to root for in this woman. She was just angry for the sake of being angry. Like, I just couldn't connect with her at all. I just did not like her, didn't really care about her. From the jump, I just did not like her. And as the movie progressed, I couldn't find anything redeemable about this woman. Like, what were her motivations? You know, she's clearly struggling with alcoholism, but there's nothing in her that seems to want to rise above it. She's clearly struggling financially. Her biggest struggle seems to be with her mother, the relationship with her mother, but I'm not seeing anything redemptive in the relationship with her children, which is where she as a character seems to be failing the most. But that's the thread right there where the demon possession kind of comes in, is her trauma and how it affects her children. But there's just nothing that connects or bridges the two before we even get to that point. So we don't really get to know the children all that much. And I just don't care what happens to any of the people in this movie. I just didn't care. The character development was just weak. It was just lax. And I checked out for like a hot minute at the beginning because I'm like, I don't care about any of these people. We get to the middle where I feel like it smooths out a little bit and the characters seem to kind of get into their groove. They're not caricatures anymore. I feel like that's where Glenn Close really showed out. At the very beginning, I just could not take her seriously. Couldn't do it. It just felt like this is Lee Daniels' version of a hood white woman. Not so much a real person. But when we get to the middle, I felt like Glenn Close was able to really show off, hey, I am the boss here. I am the seasoned veteran here. And I really liked her character towards the middle. And then when we get to the end, that's where the horror element kind of comes into play, and it got goofy real quick. Now, this is why I said it's clear he enrolled in the class, but he wasn't paying that much attention. The thing with these subgenres, especially when we're talking about these horror subgenres, is they have rules and they have tropes for a reason. He's very familiar with the tropes, but he doesn't know how to work the rules. And this is where creative license comes in, is you can break the rules as long as you know them. He knows what the elements are, but he doesn't know how they connect and the reasons for which they connect. There's a reason why a good chunk of your demon possession movies feature Catholicism. It's not because Catholicism is the be-all end all, or is because it's the strongest denomination, is that on screen it looks strong. The Protestant section of Christianity doesn't look as strong in these spiritual warfare movies. It just doesn't. And because you're reaching a very wide audience, believers and non-believers, the elements and traditions of Catholicism are just universally familiar. On screen with Catholicism, faith and action meet in a very beautiful way. I think he missed that part because we had faith here, but the action just looked very goofy. So instead of calling on a Catholic priest, which is what you would normally see in a possession film, we have a female charismatic apostle, which makes sense, I think, if you're within that, denomination or that niche of Christianity. But I think outside of that, it's like, huh? I could see the attempt to break the rules. It just didn't work. The storytelling was just not there. It wasn't good enough. The character development was just way too weak. I mean, clearly this woman is dealing with some childhood trauma that, again, we don't learn about until later. Would have been helpful information from the jump in order for us to connect with this woman so that we could see how vulnerable she is, because that's where a lot of these possession movies come into play. They're basically a really large metaphor for unhealed trauma. And what happens when you don't heal that trauma, you let the outside get in. And we just have this brick wall of a woman who is just unlikable, and children whom we don't. Why should I care what happens to these people? Kind of like the exorcism movie from last October, The Exorcist Believer, which was a direct sequel to The Exorcist. Movie was absolutely terrible, but it's the same thing, trying to bend and break the rules of that subgenre by stepping away from the Catholicness of it all, by adding in all these other denominations of Christianity, and it just didn't work. And we also had these two separate families. One family we kind of got to know, and the other family is like, why are you here? But it's kind of ironic that my mom would text me about this movie while I was walking with a friend of mine, because we actually kind of got into this conversation, because I love scary movies, right? And I also love Jesus, asking how I reconcile the two and just trying to explain to him what it looks like to me, but also talking about possession films. One of the reasons why I do love this subgenre so much is because 99% of the time, Jesus wins. Most of these possession movies are about the power of faith. And then you have some that are about the power of faith in ordinary people. And if I'm being real, and I don't know how you feel about me saying this, but a lot of them present the gospel better than most Christian films do. I'd say a solid 4 out of 10, maybe. I mean, it was a letdown as a horror movie because it wasn't scary. Had all the right elements, just didn't know how to piece them together. The editing was just weird. It's like someone heard about a possession movie but had never seen one before, had no idea what they look like. So it wasn't edited like a horror movie. It's just no real understanding of the genre itself. So that was a letdown. And also some things within the story that would just bugged me. Like, she's at the house, very beginning of the movie, and there's flies everywhere. You're telling me you sat in that house all that time, seeing these flies gather at your basement door, and then going outside and seeing flies at the cellar door, which leads to your basement, and you never once thought to go in the basement to see what is causing all these flies? I mean, common sense would tell most people there's something dead down there. If they see a whole bunch of flies congregating in one space, something is dead or dying. And you go how many days and you don't bother to check? I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. And it was such a waste of a plot point, such a waste of time, because it didn't go anywhere. Like, what was that about? Just to show how lazy she was? Andra, I thought, did an okay job, but again, her acting felt like she was checking off a list instead of playing a person. But don't you feel bothered? Yeah, I'm bothered. I was going to take a nap. I watched that instead.